what exactly is the most important aspect of this bond, and not just what is it, but why? Why is it that important?
Absolutely, Chris. So from the very beginning, when we started looking at this bond, it was about additional safe space for our kids for two reasons. One, we're out of classroom space in our district, so that's the space. And safe space because we all know Robb Elementary is on the forefront of our minds in taking care of our kids.
Right. What does a security role play into this bond?
Absolutely. There's several pieces of that. You have key card access to your campuses. You have upgrades in camera systems. You have placements of buildings that are done in such a way that provides a protective environment for kids in terms of proximity. You also have the ability in certain situations, if it can be done, to consolidate a campus under one roof so the kids are not outside that one roof and open to situations. You also have situations in terms of we got buildings with cracked foundations and expanding that definition of security and safety.
Right.
We want to have safe places for our kids. And I can also say we also have a portion of this bond that deals with the traffic flow in around our school district. And as we know, for example, on our junior high campus, there's not a good quality way right now to release those kids in the current condition. We could be a lot safer about it if we make some changes in our traffic flow. So we've set some money aside to change our traffic flow.
Okay. Currently, what protocols have you already taken to ensure that security and safety is at the top of your current priority list?
Absolutely. And as everybody has probably seen around the district, this summer immediately you saw fencing go up to kind of protect our kids and shield them from people that could walk onto our campuses. Being a rural school, a lot of our buildings are disjointed, and that keeps that free access into where our kids are at. So that we started doing. We added more bullet-resistant glass throughout the district this past summer. We added screening to reduce visibility down our hallways from the outside. We locked all of our front entrances and added cameras to those locked entrances so that there is a electronic door lock from the front office before they let somebody into a building. We've also added additional campus monitors on especially our secondary campuses because we have to still keep the doors locked in many places. So someone's got to let kids in and out of our buildings and transport them from one place to another. At the same time, since Robb Elementary, a lot of this stuff is human in nature. So being more cognizant of our doors, checking to make sure they're working, having people monitor all our doors. They get monitored daily to make sure that they're locked and they're not propped open. So, because we know some of that stuff is what happened during the reports of Robb Elementary. So,
being the security is at the forefront, everybody talks about hardening campuses and kind of making it harder to get access. And a lot of people don't understand that that's money that has to come from somewhere. And typically it comes from bond packages, grants from the state. So what kind of grants have you currently sought after from the state post Uvalde and now post Nashville?
Absolutely. So obviously the state is our biggest funder of additional safety money, and they haven't really doled out a lot yet, but we have recently went across our district and analyzed every aspect of what the new safety rules could be and provided to the state, if we went to these new safety rules that are proposed, this is what it would take for the fencing. This is what it would take for the extra bulletproof glass for all adjacent glass to doors.
Which is not cheap.
And submitted that list, and it's close to $1 million worth of upgrades should the state go this way. We're hoping that the legislature provides a lot of that money, and it is part of the conversation right now in Austin.
What kind of school additions will really help prevent something like Uvalde and Nashville from happening here?
Absolutely. So it's being mindful, I think, at every turn in the design phase. So as we actually sit down and design our doors, our entrances, the placement of our buildings, while we have some very rough placements on our maps that we've given so far, the engineering that goes into that on how to do those things can make a big difference. I think in the end, ultimately, it's going to depend on human diligence and awareness to make sure. But we need to have our school designed in the safest way possible, and that's at the forefront in mind of our architects currently.
Good. How do property taxes get distributed amongst Texas school districts?
Good question. So there is a lot of misconceptions about that. So property taxes that people pay at the county for most school districts go directly to the school district. So there are districts that are known as property wealthy districts or property rich districts. Those districts have to send excess revenue from their bank accounts from the school to the Texas Education Agency for them to reallocate to cover their expenses. Vernia is not one of those school districts. We're one of those school districts, and a lot of people don't understand this, that we receive half of our money from the state to educate our kids, and local property taxes pay for the other half of what it takes on our maintenance and operations to educate our kids.
So in kind of getting more into the weeds on that, if you're saying we get half, Wilson County generates roughly $52 billion in revenue off of property taxes that goes to school district. You get what, $7,840 per kid, roughly?
That's about right. And
that's half.
That's half. And so what's important about that, actually, that's the whole amount. So what happens is there's an amount that it takes to educate a kid, and that changes daily depending on the type of kids we have enrolled.
Right.
Every single day of the year, that number changes. And so what happens is if the county taxes are raised such that they are at the 50% level, think of a cup. So that cup's half full, and it's got a fill mark up here. The state fills it up to that fill mark, whatever it is. If I was a rich school district and my cup was all the way to the top, they're going to drain it down to that line, if you will. So it doesn't help the school district on maintenance and operations to collect any more taxes than we have to. We don't want to, because the state makes up the difference. It doesn't help a school district to have a higher maintenance and operation tax rate.
So that money already goes to other schools. So why even pull more? Because we can only spend what we can spend.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Gotcha. So outside of property appraisals growing and declining, do you see any possible way that the tax rate could actually increase with this specific bond?
I feel really good about this. We have probably one of the most conservative financial advisors that there is in the state of Texas. And he's run the actuarial tables, and I can tell you absolutely there is enough property value in Vernia ISD boundaries to cover our current bond. That's why we have it calculated at the current tax rate. If anything, as we add subdivisions, as we add houses and we add businesses, those will add to the pot of money that give the possibility of really only reducing our tax rate in upcoming years.
Why is it so important to add on to the existing campuses than not utilizing the land the district already owns to go and build new campuses? Why is that not a feasible idea?
Great question. So we have a need, not at just one campus, but across the district for increased space for kids. And so if, first of all, there's not the bonding capacity to build a new campus and still meet the needs of each of the other campuses, because an elementary campus, you're talking 35, 45 million. You start getting up into the 70 or 80 for junior high. You start getting into the 100s and over for high schools to build new. As we know, the bond is for 109 million. So if you start to build a whole campus, all of a sudden you've used most of your bonding capacity, and you still have an intermediate school or a junior high that doesn't have space for kids. And then you build a whole big new campus, and then you have two campuses that are half empty. We definitely don't want to buy a 6-bedroom house when we haven't had our first kid yet.
At least not like most people.
And so I don't think our community would want us to put out money way beyond our capabilities. And we'd still have an issue because we'd have campuses that didn't have enough room for kids.
how long will this bond extend the current life expectancy of the district campuses? Meaning, how long will this carry us to? We need to start saying, okay, now it's time to look at another bond.
Yep, and that's a good question, because if Lavernia continuously grows, that process becomes a part of who we are, just like Church Cibolo and other places that have had to expand into neighborhoods. And in our particular case, we've set the thresholds of these campuses in terms of the added space to be around 8 to 10 years. We're growing somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 11 kids per year per grade level. So this gives us 8 to 10 years. I don't think you would want us to build extra classrooms for 15 to 20 years out that would sit there unused and we'd be paying tax money on.
So what kind of timeline can we expect for the construction and the remodel of the campuses if the bond doesn't pass?
So we're hopeful if the bond does pass, we would be hopeful that the summer of 2024 would be the process where we could break ground.
Okay.
Of course, there's a lot of factors in there.
Sure.
We would spend several months, up to 6 months, if you will, going through a process to design and lay out the buildings and build the plans. As you know, commercial school buildings are a little bit different than building a house.
Oh, yeah.
It takes months and months of collaboration and efforts to get those plans ready. After the plans are ready, then we have to go out for bidding. And after the bid is given, 18 to 24 months for building on top of that. And that will all depend on weather, availability, both materials and crews. So 18 to 24 months after the summer of 2024.
Okay.
It's quite a lengthy process to build a commercial building as opposed to
absolutely.
to them.
So what happens if the bond does not pass?
Well, if this bond does not pass, first and foremost, we don't have classrooms to add our next teachers into.
Wow.
So there's only a couple of options you can do. One has to do with class size. We pride ourselves in Lavernia in staying within the state's recommended levels.
Sure.
And that especially holds true for our elementary campuses, where we pride ourselves in keeping our classrooms 22 to 1.
Okay.
We know many of our surrounding school districts don't keep their classes 22 to 1, but we want it that way in Lavernia, and we expect to have that sort of setting for our kids. And that's something that would have to go by the wayside, whether it be 26, 27, 28, 29, or 30 in an elementary classroom. Depending on the number of kids that come and how long it would be before a bond passed, that could rise to be very high. The other option is that you keep buying portables. Vernia ISD does not want to be in the portable business. We currently just purchased 2 because we had to, and each portable nowadays, with inflation, is over $200,000 a piece for portable. So you can only imagine that's money put out there that you'll never get your money back for.
Sure.
When you go to resell those. So one of those things has to give and happen.
Gotcha. Okay. Talk to me about the importance of Proposition B.
Absolutely. Proposition B deals with the turf on the football field, and it is a separate proposition because the state requires any stadium of that nature to put in a separate proposition because it's appropriate for the taxpayers to make an independent decision on that. But the reason it's there, it goes back to student safety, as we said before, a little bit different look at it. So our field gets measured for safety, if you will, every year for compression, or how hard the field is.
Okay.
And there's a unit called G-Max. People are welcome to go read all they want to about the mechanics of calculating. But basically, it measures the hardness of a field every year. And so a couple of things, when they measure it, because they measure it at many points on the field, for safety purposes, the recommendations are that you don't want any single space in the field to exceed 200.
Okay.
If it does, that's a safety issue. They also don't want the average of all the places tested to be above 165.
Okay.
Well, we do have at least one place over 200 at 206, and we have an average of 175.
Wow.
So we have actually placed an excerpt from even our last test on our bond webpage so people can go through and read investigate that further, explore it, they're welcome to give us a call. But that goes back to keeping our kids safe.
Yep.
And we want to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. Talked about the testing procedures of the field. Why not just throw grass down?
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Oh.
Grass is not the grass. This grass is not the grass that you and I would go buy from Home Depot. Grass on sports field is much more expensive, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the grass itself.
Okay.
You look, there's already a turf field in place, which means there's 12 or 13 inches of base. There's drainage that's set up for that, not drainage for grass. There's not sprinkler systems. They have very expensive mowers that you got to use to do it.
Yep.
The watering bill, the labor to cut it. Once you're already going down that route and we have it, it's better to go ahead and sustain that. Otherwise, the cost is astronomical.
Gotcha. And it's also multi-use, right? The turf is multi-use.
And it's
you're able to...
absolutely, and that's a good point too. A lot of people think of our turf as being football. Well, it's soccer, it's band practice, and band. I don't know if people know it. They have when they use it to practice, they have very specific dots and placements that the kids walk to that don't work very well on grass. And since we've gotten to be bigger in Vernia, we have freshman football, we got JV football, then we got varsity football. And then with the soccers too, the amount of wear and tear on that field is not what it was when we were kids.
Yep.
When it was just the varsity football and the JV every other week. The use is through the roof now. Not to mention junior high A and B teams. There's a lot more wear and tear. Grass does not hold up as well as the turf does.
No, absolutely. And what happens if Proposition B doesn't pass?
Well, we look at it as this way. If that report tells us it's not safe for our kids, we're going to have to take the money from somewhere. That comes from our maintenance and operations side from that standpoint, which impacts things such as supplies that our kids have to do their jobs, the money that we have to pay quality teachers in the district, and those things would have consequences and suffer to the tune of about $1 million because we have to do it.
And what is the overall current financial situation for the district?
Absolutely. So the district financial situation is really good currently. So one of the major factors in determining a district's financial health is what they call fund balance. I equate it to if you checked your savings account every summer, okay, where am I at now? Do I have enough? Should I lose my job for 6 months or to pay my bills? We get audited once every year at the same time. That's once we close our books in June. And then in the end, we get a fund balance. So just to give you some numbers, in 2019, that amount of money was $5.1 million. In 22, this year, it's $8.4 million. So we've managed to increase that to get beyond 3 months. It's that typical old adage, and we get graded on it by the state. They want you to keep at least 3 months. So in the last couple of years, we've been able to restore that fund balance to the appropriate level of our expenses.
So with the current financial situation that you just described, how does that play into the bond and how it's paid for?
Absolutely. So there's a health, if you will, on the interest and sinking, or you'll hear us say INS sometimes, side of our finances as well. So I'm very fortunate. Our board of trustees over several years now have made the effort with any money they have to pay down our interest and to pay down our principal on previous bonds. In paying those down, they've left headroom to actually pay for this bond. So there's money within the current tax rate to pay for this bond without having to increase the tax rate.
Okay, that's great. So obviously a ton of great information here. Where can people get additional information?
Absolutely. So if you go back to the Vernia ISD webpage, about us, you'll see a bond 2023 link. Click on that link, and there's more information than you would ever want to know.
Okay, and to include voting locations and times and dates.
Absolutely.
Great.